Yes, Romford Film Festival is officially, as of right now, starting up. We haven't shown anything yet. It kicks off around about 11 a.m., but today is the 24th, as at the time of recording, because this might go out tomorrow. But at the time of recording, it is the 24th of May. The festival has kicked off at 11 a.m., and I'm actually joined by the director Russ Emanuel of a movie called Occupants, which is the first feature of the festival.
Oh,
It's
wow.
showing first thing this morning. It's in with a nice little short by returning director Kate Sarinskaya for Tea, and then we're showing Occupants. How are you this morning, Ross? How's everything doing?
Well, I'm pretty good. Thank you for having me. I'm just very honored, and yeah, I'm here for you.
No, it was great to have your submission because one thing we found this year is that we seem to have had quite a few outside of the box thinking type movies, and Occupants definitely falls into that category to the point where we actually created like a new award this year, which is like best original concept kind of thing, and because everybody seemed to be like, let's play a little bit differently this year and let's do something different, and that's what I super liked about your film because since the pandemic and everything like that, we get a lot of Zoom movies. So
Oh
and
yeah.
a lot of found footage kind of things. So when
Hmm.
you first turn yours on, it's like, oh, we've got another pandemic movie, but then it turns into something completely different, and it becomes its own creature and its own beast.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed Occupants. It was right
Thank
up
you.
my street.
Thank you so much.
So what we'll do first, man, let's jump back a minute and let's let our viewers, our audience, know a little bit more about Russ before we get into Occupants. Tell us a little bit about your background, like not don't have to go too far back to your birth or anything, but tell us a little bit about your background and how you came into filmmaking, and most of all, why on earth you would do that.
Why would I do that? Well, my name is Russ Emanuel. I was born in Alameda, California, which is near San Francisco. But we moved around a lot, my family. And I lived half my childhood in Japan and
Hmm.
half my childhood here. So, I gathered or garnered a international point of view on life, I guess. And one thing I really love is music, specifically the music of John Williams, who's the
Nice.
composer of scores like Star Wars, Jurassic Park, Superman, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. And I think it was at the time I was living in Japan, 1992, and Jurassic Park was showing. So in Japan, at least back then, film showed the American film show like 6 months afterwards. So I saw it in 1992, like in January or February 1990, or I'm sorry, 94. So the film came out in 93, so it was 94.
Yeah.
And I remember the scene in the helicopter when they were approaching Isla Nubar, and the cinematography, the acting, and especially the music. It just really got to me, and I got these goosebumps here. And it was just I just love film music, and um, you know, I just love film. So I went to the University of Southern California, and I had an emphasis in cinema, television, and I also took classes at UCLA, which is USC's rival school in Los Angeles. And I met my future filmmaking partner, Emil Harris, who unfortunately passed away last year. But because of that friendship and relationship that we had, we made films from 2002 to our current feature, which is called Staycation, which is in post production right now, which is kind of like Occupants in the sense that it's kind of taking place like this on the
Yeah.
Zoom conference call. But with Harris, I he's such a brilliant editor and he's such a brilliant DP, and he was the editor and DP on Occupants, which is why I mentioned him. We just made several shorts, and this one short called Girl with Gun just got into a lot of places like Comic-Con, and I'm talking the San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And because of that film, I met my future producing partner, Howard Nash, and Howard had hired me to direct my first feature film at the age of 29 called PJ. And PJ had the main actor was the late John Hurd, the Home Alone dad. And to direct an actor of his caliber on my first feature at 29 was very stupefying. But I just love film, and I'm just so grateful that he trusted me. I also was able to work with actors like Robert Picardo, who happens to be in Occupants. But that was my first time working with Mr. Picardo, who is the doctor on Star Trek Voyager, which is probably where a lot of people know him from. And then we made Chasing the Green with Howard and with Harris. My second feature had actors like William Devane, who was in Sir Alfred Hitchcock's last film, Family Plot. So that was a big honor to be able to direct Mr. Devane. And then we did The Legends of Nathaya with, again, Robert Picardo. And then Occupants, which is my fourth feature film. And since then, I did another feature called Whisper. And then now I'm doing my sixth feature called Staycation. So that's really, I guess, my trajectory. And I'm just really grateful to people like, Harris, to Mr. Picardo, to Howard, and a lot of other people.
And how important for a filmmaker do you think that infrastructure is, to have people like that around you that you can sort of lean on? Like you say, your first movie, you were 29, you're going into making a feature, it's a bit daunting, but how important is it to have that kind of infrastructure with you?
Oh, it's very, I always say when we got into Romford, I said, go team Occupants. And when I say team, I mean team like a family. The cast and crew is a family. And, I may be the director of the film, but it takes everybody to make the film happen. And I mean everybody. So, I've been there. I've been a production assistant, back in the old days, if you will. No, I understand. So I want to treat everybody who works on Occupants or Staycation or any other film I do as family. And I think that infrastructure is very important. With Harris, I was able to rely on him in the sense that I knew, he could edit the film, and I knew that he was really good with pacing. He came up with the ideas in Occupants with the glitch, when you glitch from the real universe to the parallel universe. He came up with that, and he came up with the camera setups and everything. But we, of course, talked about it and said, okay, we should do this and that and that. I also have to mention Julia Cameron, the writer of Occupants. I mean, her script was just so brilliant. And it was Howard who found her script, I think on Inktip. And, I'm just really grateful to people like Julia, because her script was just so out there, and it turns out her husband, Tim, loves Robert Picardo. And the original character was a female, the Dr. Peterson character. But she switched it to Picardo because her husband really loved Robert Picardo. And, she was able to make that adjustment. So, that team is very important. And of course, the lead actors, I mentioned Picardo, but Brianna White and Michael Pugliasi, they pulled it off. We shot for 10 shoot days, and the first 7, they were the real couple, so she had the blonde hair and he had the facial hair. And then we shifted for the last 3 shoot days to her being the brunette, and then him, he grew his beard for like 3 months to prepare for it. And then he just shaved it off. So once you shave it off, once she becomes a brunette, it's like, we can't go back. So
Yeah.
We planned this out to the T, and I'm a stickler for perfection in terms of perfectionism. So I had a plan B, plan C, plan D. I just planned the heck out of this just to make sure that once we dyed our hair brunette, and if you go from a blonde to brunette, it's much harder to go back from brunette to blonde. Put it that way. So
Yeah.
and for him, of course, once he shaves it off, it's off. Yeah. So yeah, the team is very important. So I was just really grateful. And the film Occupants is 81 minutes long. It could have been 90. I mean, we had the
It could have
footage,
been.
but Harris was just so brilliant with pacing, you know. And when he cut it down, and basically, I had a little gristle and fat, on the steak, if you will, and we just made it lean, as lean
Hmm.
as possible. And that's why it's 81 minutes. So again, if it was 95 or whatever, 100 minutes, I don't think it would have worked. I think the pacing would have been too slow. So
Yeah,
he
I
was
think I
really,
think sometimes you can run the risk of having scenes in there just for the sake of having them, and it
Mhm,
doesn't really add anything.
mhm, mhm.
Whereas Occupants does move at, like, once it gets moving, it's a bit of a breakneck speed, and we kind of get through to it. And then no, you're absolutely right. This film didn't need to be any longer. It didn't need to be any shorter. It's kind of just on the bubble, perfect.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we talk again about the team. It was Howard who came up with the fire scene. And for anybody who hasn't seen the film,
Mm.
I don't want to extrapolate any further, but if you saw the trailer, you kind of see the fire scene, if you will. But he came up with that idea. It wasn't me, it wasn't Julia, it was him. So again, everybody has great ideas. And I think it takes that team to make it happen.
In terms of your lead cast, obviously, yeah, Brianna White and Michael Pug. I'm going to say this wrong, so I'll let you say
Pugliasi.
it. I'm always going to say a name wrong like that because I'm terrible with names.
Oh,
But
I was saying Puglisi at first, but yes, it's he corrected me many a times. It's Pugliasi.
I, I bet, I bet. How did you go about casting these two? Because they're pretty perfect in the role, and their chemistry together, whether they're having good moments or bad, like their chemistry is pretty spot on. So, how did you go about casting these guys? And what was it like crafting these characters?
Well, I mean, first off, with Robert Picardo, we had worked with him before.
Yeah,
He is, I guess, the supporting character in this film. So he was like basically Howard had the relationship with Mr. Picardo and said,
right.
hey, we did, PJ and Chasing the Green and Nathia together. Would you like to come on board to do Occupants? And we can have you in for one shoot day. And he's like, okay, and it was Howard who crafted that deal. With Michael and Brianna, and this is a pre-COVID era where we actually auditioned people in an audition room.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing with the COVID thing, that kind of was thrown out the wayside, because interaction, So
Mm.
post-COVID, I think it's coming back, but when I did, like staycation, that was a no-go, there was
Yeah.
no way. But this, pre-COVID, this was, before 2019. So we auditioned, especially Brianna. I think we auditioned like 26 actresses, and she was actually the last one that we put onto the docket. And if I remember, my memory is serving me right, and she almost didn't make the audition process. But when we auditioned all 26 actresses, she was by far the best. And I remember, I was talking to Michael. At this point, we had already cast Michael, and I was talking to Howard, and Harris was there to, film her audition and the
Mhm.
callback. And the reason I wanted Mike, and Michael was there too, to act opposite her. So, I wanted to make sure, especially with Brianna, that interacting with her going to be her husband and her parallel husband, that it was going to, look authentic, even though they hadn't, met each other, I think it was like 3 days before the film shoot. I wanted to make sure that they were, in acting terms, listening to each other,
Yeah,
back and forth, back and forth. With Harris, I wanted him there because I wanted to make sure for camera that they look good. So, and we all talked about it, and we're like, Brianna was by far the best. Like, and I had called her and I left a message, and she didn't call me back for a while. I'm going, does she not want the role? And I was talking to Michael and going, Michael, we may have to go with the second choice. And he's like, no. So it was very obvious he wanted Brianna. And then, yeah, it turns out she was at work. And then, she called me
right.
back, says, oh, yes, yes, I would love to do it. And then what I had my actors do at that point, because we were going to shoot like 3 days later, I said, can you, if possible, just meet up for coffee or something and just talk to each other, get to know each other,
Yeah,
just because you're supposed to play a husband and wife, couple. And I think if you get to know each other, it might come across more natural. This is a director's thing. I was
yeah.
thinking, what is the most, logical thing to do? And I thought that would be, and they did that. So, you know, yeah, I hope anybody who sees the film, think that Brianna and Michael are been married for, I don't know, 6, 7 years, which is what it was the
It,
case in the film, as Annie and Neil
it
Bruce.
definitely works.
Okay.
It definitely works. I thought so because, especially when you're doing something like this, where I guess it's not really a spoiler because we've already kind of touched on it. But when you're dealing with the parallel version, and it's sort of like in one version they kind of love each other and they're playful, and then in the other version they're not so much. But it plays perfectly on both sides of the camera, so to speak.
Mhm.
Where did the obviously the script was already written, but how did you flesh out the concept of flipping between the two?
As in like camera setup or just the
Um,
idea?
between between the two dimensions, kind of thing, the two different characters, two different sets of characters. Sorry.
Well, one thing I mentioned I grew up in both Japan and the U.S.
Yeah,
So in my mind, it's kind of like a dichotomy. Like the American mindset and the Japanese mindset are kind of different,
yeah,
and I have those conflicting sides in my brain. Because I'm half white American and half Japanese.
yeah,
So I kind of understood that dichotomy. And when I read the script, and I'm going, I totally understand these characters,
yeah,
because, yeah, we all make decisions in life, and what if we made one decision that changed our trajectory in a different path? And that's basically, it's like when you have Annie see her parallel self, she kind of like going, "Oh my God, that's me. That could have been me.
yeah,
It is me, but my God, am I really like that?" And you start to question yourself. No, that's why it was so
yeah,
brilliant.
yeah. No, I
I'm
get it.
going, I totally understand. And if you watch the film, it goes from documentary to sci-fi to horror.
Yeah,
And I don't want to give it away, but these characters are horrified by their parallel versions, and then they start to question themselves and their
mm,
partners, in the process. And I think that's what makes the script so brilliant. So it's like who done it kind of, psychological terror kind of thing. I could have been, I don't know, an engineer. That was actually my major at USC initially before I switched to cinema. I could have been a chemical engineer like my uncle, my dear uncle Richard, but I turned out to be a filmmaker. Maybe I
that's
should have been
so
an
cool.
engineer. Maybe I am an engineer in a parallel universe. I don't know, but
I mean,
you
in
know,
a way, you kind of are an engineer. You're putting all the parts together, you're putting all the pieces together to make movies.
yeah, that's true. And I just think, I don't know, not, you have like, a lot of parallel dimension stuff now, with Marvel or Star Wars or Star Trek. I'm watching Discovery right now, and you have the
Mm,
mirror universe, and so but basically, yeah, it is you, but it's you doing something that's very maniacal and
Yeah.
very grotesque and horrific. And you're thinking, oh my God, but it is still me. Does that mean that I have the potential to be like that person? And that's what happened to Annie and Neil,
Yeah.
and I think that's why, when I conveyed that to the actors, I think they got it. I hope they did, but yeah, watch the film, they're horrified. I would be, and
Oh,
I put
absolutely.
myself in their shoes as a director. So yeah.
What are you when you see this up on the screen? Everyone can tell me like the little niggly things that weren't quite right or didn't quite work, or everybody can tell me that what's wrong with their movie. But what are you most proud of when you see Occupants up on the big screen, and maybe there was like a hard day of filming and you didn't think you were going to get it, but you got it in the end and it looks fantastic on screen. What are you most proud of with Occupants?
It brings to mind this one scene where it's hard not to spoil the film.
Yeah,
But
no, I get that.
it was the parallel version of themselves. They were sitting at the dining table, and by the way, the dining table, if you notice in the parallel universe, is a three-piece. I
Right.
purposely made them more distant in the parallel universe, but in the
All
real
right.
universe, it's a two-piece. So symbolically, they're farther apart. And if you notice,
Yeah.
the clothing and everything is more monochromatic and gray,
Yeah.
black, whatever, in the parallel universe. So I purposely did that, versus the colorful. Oh, sorry about that. Versus the colorful, real universe. So
Yeah.
anyway, but there was this one scene where and again, sorry, spoiler alert. It was like a 7-minute take or something where she had to the parallel Annie was going to drug her husband, and she had
Mm.
to open the bottle of beer. She had to pour it into a glass, put in the sleeping pills, which were actually mints, mix it up, put it, in the corner where he's going to drink it. He sits down, he drinks it, and they have a conversation, and then he falls down because he got drugged. And it took us 7 takes to do that. And I remember the first 6 takes, it was very frustrating because there was things were going wrong, when you do takes, it's anyway, I wasn't feeling it, I remember in one take there was a fly just flying in the shot, and I'm going, it was bothering me. And remember, as we were filming, 10 straight days. Okay. Now it was like
Yeah.
day 8 or 9. By that point, everybody's nerves are a little bit frayed, right? Because, you're filming like 12, 16-hour days, 10 days straight. So, basically I was getting very frustrated. And when you're on a film set, the lights are up and it's very hot, and, it wasn't working. And I'm going like, okay, maybe we can break it up. And also I can Harris, and what can we do? Can we just, glitch to the real universe and, glitch back to parallel? What can we do? And he goes, we might as well just do a 7th take. I'm like, okay, fine. So it's like, Brianna, I'm like, we'll just do one more take, then we'll move on if it doesn't work. And we did it. And it worked. The 7th take was the charm. I couldn't believe it. I'm going, oh my God, that's it. Right? You can move on. But yeah, that was, I guess, one of my best experiences. When it works, and it worked
Yeah.
for that 7th take.
See, I'm betting what happened there is they went backstage and they went through the other room and they're like, you know what, we're gonna get fired if we don't nail this scene.
Oh man.
so
Well,
so
when it works, and it definitely worked for that 7th take.
absolutely, absolutely. So we're gonna start wrapping it up a little bit, but I do have a couple extra questions in there. First of all, where can people see occupants
Yeah.
after Romford? What's the plans for the feature? When are people going to get to see it worldwide? What's next for Occupants?
Well, I think you could see it on Tubi TV or
Cool.
Amazon. I think. It was the producer Howard who made the deal, and I think the name might have switched to Ultraverse. It's
Oh,
like our distributor did that. But
bit
yeah,
bit on the nose, isn't it?
yeah, it is. But for me, it's always going to be,
Yeah, exactly.
Occupants,
Exactly.
which it has this prime place in my office here. Uh, but yeah, and I would love to do a sequel, but I mean it depends on if the cards are right. I
Yeah.
mean, I know Brianna especially. She's working on like Final Fantasy VII, the
Yeah.
game. She plays a pretty main character in that game and the remake and the sequel. So she's pretty busy. So we'll see. But I am working right now on my sixth feature film called Staycation, and that one has more Star Trek actors. I worked with actors like Olivia Dabo,
Nice.
who was on the Wonder Years, and she was a character in Star Wars and Star Trek. So she plays a news reporter, Grace Baxter, and I worked with other people like Sean Kenny, who was the crippled Captain Pike on the original Star Trek show. So anyway, yeah, I'm I just I would love to do Occupants too, but if we can't, then we can't. But you definitely could see Occupants, on places like Amazon and Tubi.
And I'll be putting any links that I can see, anything I can find. I'll be putting all that in the description. So please do, everybody, check the description. And if I've got a link to the Tubi, we'll put that in there as well. But today, the 24th, obviously, hopefully I get this out tonight, but the 24th of May, we are playing Occupants at Romford, and you're going to absolutely love this feature. It's a great feature. Yeah.
I'm just showing my production site called Russin.com.
Oh,
And on there, you can see the link to Occupants. And I think that's the best way because I link everything. So, yeah, you can go to
well,
Occupants.
we will put all that in the description as well during the editing and everything like that. I got one more question that I like to ask everybody, and it really, really gets on everyone's nerves, and you end up hating me as we round out the interview. So we'll get to that in a second. But first of all, you've given me the links. I'm going to put all that in the description, but let people know where they can find you, where they can find your projects, and just promote yourself for a quick minute.
Okay, well, you can find me on my website called Russin Productions. That's basically a combination of my first and last name, Russ Emanuel. So RUSSEM, M as in Mary.com. And from there, you could see, Occupants, PJ, Chasing the Green. I'm making a trilogy of films with Paul Hickman, my producer, called The Assassin's Apprentice, which is an
Oh, nice.
action saga, if you will. And we have actors like Marina Sirtis, who was Counselor Troy on Star Trek: The Next Generation, Armin Shimmerman, who was Quark on Star Trek: Deep Space Nine, Robert Picardo, among others. So yeah, you can see the links to all this. And again, thank you so much for having me and Occupants at your wonderful festival. And to everybody who's going to watch it, I hope you enjoy it. And I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. It's a great feature, especially to be kicking off the festival as well. That's so cool to be kicking off that way with such a good feature that is really going to set the tone for the festival. I'll say, which is
I hope
awesome.
in a good way.
No, in a good way, definitely in a good way. So I hope everybody's there to watch the movie, and I hope everyone enjoys it and lets us know online what the crack is, because obviously they can go to the Facebook and things like that, and they can let us know, which is always fun about Romford. People do like to get involved. But the final question, and it's the old desert island question. You are on a desert island. You got one movie for the rest of your life. However, the nerdly Kevin Halden twist to this question is that you, as a director, have to have remade your version of this movie, and that's the version you have on the island.
It's The Empire Strikes Back, but it will not be as good as the original.
Be the meatballs version.
Russ Emanuel, Ed Wood type version of The Empire Strikes Back. So
That's a good answer. It's a great answer. Easily one of the best films of all time. So you're taking on an easy task there, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's one of those questions that people either like super embrace it or they're like, oh no, 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 you can't ask me that. But I like to put people on the spot and ask that.
I
And
love that film. I just love Star Wars, but that film just really just tops it. It was just brilliant. It's an amazing film.
it's just a family drama, really. It's like a soap opera. So it's, I mean, that's what I love about Star Wars in total, but Empire Strikes Back in particular is like at its absolute basic core is one of the most relatable stories out there,
Mm-hmm.
set in
I agree.
space.
I agree. It's space opera.
So Russ, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you. I know we had a little bit of issue at the start there. That's completely on me. But thank you for sticking around and doing this. I really, really did love Occupants, and if you do have a sequel in mind, and if the cards fall, I'd love to see what you do with it next, because it was a concept that, although seemingly when it first started, I was like, oh, I've seen a ton of these recently. Like it's not really, that's kind of what I thought to begin with. But of course, you stick with it, you stay the course, and you get a gem out of it. You get an absolute gem. And thank you for letting us have it. Thank you for letting us show it. And thank you for doing this. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.